Welcome back. Sorry, we're 1 minute late. No, we're not late. Well, Aiden's going to deal with the heat. Yes, several of you have mentioned you're freezing in the room, so we are going to try to warm it up a little bit. The campfire will be coming. So it's my privilege now to introduce our next speaker, Rabbi Ari Averbach, who's going to be talking about at the Cine-gogue, greatest Jewish moments in cinema. Ari is the senior rabbi from Temple Etz Chaim in Thousand Oaks. He's no stranger to Valley Beth Shalom. It actually was Rabbi Schulweis who convinced him to leave the film industry. Sound familiar? Rabbi Leibowitz too. To attend Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies. And of course, he's now on the board of the Ziegler. I should mention also that he's also a board member of the Schulweis Institute, where he is moderating part of the new podcast series that'll be released later this year from the Schulweis Institute. He's also on the ethics committee of Los Robles Medical Center and has other leadership roles in the community. And we are excited to welcome you back today, Ari, a rabbi talking about the movies. Well, what else could you ask for? Oh, do you want this?
Thank you for that. I always feel strange with introductions, but thank you for reading my bio. Thank you, Joel and Bill, for inviting me here. Thank you all. As was mentioned, I grew up here. I went to Hebrew school here. I did little performances for the holidays on this stage and on the next stage. My bar mitzvah was Rabbi Schulweis officiated on the bima with Cantor Fox, and the party was in that room. And then when I was an intern, when I was in rabbinical school, I became an intern here. So I remember many of you from my childhood or from rabbinical school. Like your chief rabbi here, I was in the film industry before I switched over to rabbinics. Just a piece of that is I loved movies. Growing up, my dad would sit me down next to him as he's watching some movie. This is back when a movie happened to be on TV. It wasn't like now where you could choose what movie to watch when. It was just whatever happened to be on TV. And Ari, you got to sit with me. This is a great flick. And it was always a great flick. And he would show me these movies that were mostly in black and white, mostly older movies. And I'd sit and watch it with him. He'd say, how have you never seen Exodus? You got to sit down and watch. Have you never seen Bridge on the River Kwai? Come sit down. And how many times I've watched those movies. So I got a love of great film from my dad. And my mom treated the Academy Awards like it was another holiday. Right, we always hosted Pesach, we always hosted Thanksgiving, we always hosted Hanukkah for a few nights. All the holidays we hosted, and Oscar night. She would put out a red carpet, like a tablecloth probably that she bought, and you couldn't talk during the awards show. Commercials are fine, but you couldn't talk during the show. And we would watch movies, and so it became my goal to see every Academy Award nominated movie when I was a kid. This was now, I'm 14 years old, dragging my mom to see this movie that Entertainment Weekly was sure to be nominated, where it's just one of these depressing, Norwegian movies. And she'd be like, what am I watching? And you have to watch this. This Czech film. And I knew every director of all of these. And so I was just so in love with it. I didn't play sports, to my parents' chagrin, but I made movies. I'd get together with my friends. My friend Adam and I would sit together and make movies. We'd get together for sleepovers, or whenever we were together, we'd make movies. And so when it came time for college, I thought, you have to go to the best film school. I went to NYU Film School. And my friend Adam, my closest friend since first grade, says, well, if you're going, I'll go. It's like, no, the whole point of college is to get away from the people I already know and start fresh somewhere. He goes, might as well go with you. And so we went to college together, and we made some movies together. We made one movie that was in a festival here. Although I just drove by, there was a theater at Beverly and Fairfax. somewhere over there, and they just knocked it down. That's where our movie premiered in Los Angeles, and they knocked it down. It was so sad to drive by that. So I was in the film industry. Was anybody here in the film industry at some point? Good for you. Good for you. It's so hard to live in Los Angeles and not be part of the film industry at some point. I hated every second of it. It was neat I talked to all the famous people, and me, because I watched the credits. It's part of my religion to pay my respect to those who made the movies. My kids say that my favorite part of a TV show is the credits. And I knew everybody, and so when I would talk to the casting director, A.V. Kaufman, it was like you talking to, Spielberg, Cecil B. DeMille. I thought she's the best casting director in the business. And talking to her, oh my gosh. But then I'd also talk to real famous people too. But aside from that, I hated the work. And so I switched jobs to another place in the film industry, and I hated that even more. And then my mom said, and I'd work all day and all night. My mom called me one day and said, Ari, Janice Kaminer-Resnick just went to the refugee camps outside of Darfur. And I said, I've heard of Darfur. And she said, why don't you come to Temple? She's doing a presentation. So I went to Temple, and I watched her presentation. I went back to work the next day, and I quit. And I emailed Janice and said, can I volunteer with you? I'll do anything, just I want to cleanse my soul from the film industry. And so I volunteered for Jewish World Watch until I started working with Jewish World Watch, until I started teaching Hebrew school, Hebrew High, leading trips to Israel. And that's when Rabbi Schulweis sat me down and said, you'll be a rabbi. And I said, no, there's actually this job at HBO that just opened up, and I'm going to apply. He said, stop it. So I'm grateful to him and grateful to my upbringing here and grateful to this culture. I used to watch every movie. Now I watch almost no movies. It used to be when the Oscars came out, I knew the actors. I mean, I knew them. I knew their phone numbers. I knew these people. And now they announce the Oscars or the Emmys. I've never even heard of these people. I have no idea I've never seen the movies. I'm still confused as to how some of these, I watched the trailer, I go, that looks like garbage, and then it gets nominated for Best Picture. I go, what am I missing? So I wanted to talk a little bit with you about films. So I think for me, my favorite movies get classified in 3 categories. One is ones that I love. And maybe I love them because I watched them at a special time in my life, or I watched them with somebody I loved. Somebody said, sit with me and watch this. So I love Bridge on the River Kwai because my dad said, you have to watch this. And then there's the movies that I've seen more than any other movie. It's not because I love it. It just happens to be on TV a lot. Actually, when I worked in the film industry, the first place I worked was the mailroom. Maybe you've heard of the mailroom. And in the mailroom, it's so boring, a third grader could do this work. A smart second grader could do the work. It's so awful. They would just put in a DVD and we'd watch a movie. And when I worked there, every day they chose the same movie. We watched the same movie twice a day, every day. So the movie, it's not my favorite movie, I think it's a well-made movie, is The Big Lebowski. We watched that twice a day, every day, for 3 months. I know it very well. But it's not so there's the movies you've seen the most. If I had hated it, I couldn't have stand it. Then there's the movies that, I don't know if you love them, but you can admit that they're perfectly made films. Can anybody give me an example of a movie that you love that's it's not a great movie, it's just a movie you really like? When Harry Met Sally is a fun movie to watch, and maybe you've seen it a lot of times. I think we can all admit, if they're the top 10 greatest films ever made, when Harry Met Sally isn't in the top, it's really good and it's fun. Whereas Casablanca might be one of those, maybe we could disagree, might be one of those you might not like it, but we can admit it's a great film. It's very well made. Maybe you love it, but that opening shot as we're tracking through Rick's bar, it catches you. The acting is superb. The storytelling is great. Everything about it, except for there's one line in it that's terrible. But aside from that one line, it's something like, do you know this line? It's something along the lines of, do you know, There's great lines of all the gin joints in all the world, and play it, Sam, you played it for her, you can play it for me. There's great lines. There's one line that's terrible, and it's something like, is that my heart beating, or is that bombs falling on Paris? You're like, ugh. And aside from that, it's a great movie. All right, so we've got one category that's well-made movies, another category of movies that we just love, and the other category is movies you've seen a bunch of times. Well, The Martian, you've seen that a lot of times? Do you remember The Martian? This is maybe 10 years ago. Matt Damon is left behind on Mars. And it's gravity, it's castaway, it's can one person survive it's a stranger in a very strange land kind of situation. It's amazing. Wow, I not expected. For me now as a parent, I've watched, whatever, The Little Mermaid or Cinderella. How many times? Was there another example? Pretty Woman, you've seen it a lot of times. Can I tell you, best years of our lives, one of the best movies ever made. I don't know if it ever makes it into a top 10 list, because it's lost somewhere in the, and it is 3.5 hours long or something. It's 2 DVDs. I rented it so my wife could watch it. I said, we got to sit down and watch it. And she saw it was 2 DVDs, and she's like, I can't. And so we didn't. And but it's a great movie. I don't know if I could watch it more than 2 or 3 times. Then we have movies, like Saving Private Ryan or Schindler's List are great movies. Raging Bull, I don't know if I want to watch that again. I saw it once, and not only did I see it, I watched it in film school, and the professor noted a lot of things about it. One said, when Scorsese made Raging Bull, he took his editor, Thelma, and he said, I want the big fight scene to be cut the same exact way as the Psycho shower scene. So if you could unspool the film of Raging Bull and Psycho, you'd see that in the big fight scene and the shower scene, it's the same quick kind of editing on the same meter. And so once I knew that, I then watched The Departed. And my friend Adam, I should say, I mentioned before, he went to film school with me. He's now an editor. And he worked on The Departed. And I watched The Departed. This came out 15 years ago, another Scorsese film. It won Best Picture. And in that scene, there is a shower scene where the actress Vera Farmiga is taking a shower towards the end of the movie. It's a very tense moment. I don't believe there's nudity in the moment. It's cut the same way as the Psycho shower scene, which I don't think I would have thought about if somebody hadn't said, watch how Scorsese edits. Look at his favorite movies, and he'll try to repeat that in other movies. All right, any other examples of, yes? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Which category does that go in? Is that movies that you've seen a lot of times? You're all surprising. What was that? Right, my last job was in Chicago when I was a rabbi there for 4 years. I know that your chief rabbi here grew up in Chicago. Everybody there would ask me, do I know Nolan? I go, of course I know Nolan. But he was from Highland Park, and I was from the suburb over of Northbrook, is where I was for a couple of years. Do you know Northbrook, Deerfield? All right, so here's some great movies. So here's then the follow-up question. If we're talking about great Jewish movies, I love having a white, I don't need it. What was that? If we're talking about great Jewish movies, what are the criteria? Don't name the movies. What are the criteria for a great Jewish movie? Humor. So for me, Pearl hit it on the head for me, is authenticity. And we'll get to some examples of that. I think showing real Judaism is so much more interesting. We could all water it down a lot, but showing real Judaism there, I think, is great. Humor, Jewish humor is a big part of it. There's a specific kind that somehow, there's no Protestant humor or Methodist humor. There's nobody ever watched a show and said, this is too Calvinist. But we can watch something that isn't Jewish, and there's this tinge of Jewish humor that defines it. What are other criteria for making a great Jewish movie? So there was this pause there. Jewish characters, Jewish actors. How do we feel about a Marjorie Morningstar, where Natalie Wood, who had recently played a Puerto Rican, is now playing a Jewish girl? Do we care? Do we care if it's authentic and it feels good? Watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, it's hard to admit to ourselves that Rachel Brosnahan is not Jewish. She embodies it well, and there's this struggle. What about a Jewish director? Norman Jewison just passed away, and despite his last name, Norman Jewison, not Jewish. He made Fiddler on the Roof, so I have this book that somebody gave me like for my bar mitzvah or high school graduation, the 50 greatest Jewish movies. Number 2, Fiddler on the Roof. And what an interesting thing that it's not a Jewish director. And I think, I don't remember who plays all the roles. I feel like Golda was played by Maria something, who's Helen, Helen Mirren was in The Woman in Gold and in Golda that just came out, and she's not Jewish. She's got Jewish heritage. She doesn't define herself as Jewish. And there was this question of, I haven't seen Funny Girl out here. I've seen the movie, right? A nice Jewish Ashkenazi boy growing up in the suburbs. Somebody's going to sit me down and watch Barbra Streisand movies. But I haven't seen the play Funny Girl, and there's been a lot of backlash in the theater community that the woman playing Fanny Brice on the national tour here at the Amundsen here, I've heard she's amazing, not Jewish. She's a wow, and not Jewish. And when they were making the musical on Broadway, they were supposed to have other people write the music and lyrics for the show when it was coming out. They said, it's going to be great. We're having Carol Burnett as Fanny Brice. And the creators said, if there's not a Jew playing this role, we're out. And since Carol Burnett was attached, the other creatives walked away from it saying, she's very talented, but that's not the play that we're writing. We're writing this something that's Jewish. You need a Jewish actress. And so it's interesting that now, was Gypsy, I don't think they were supposed to be Jewish, but there's something very, here you have Jules Stein and Stephen Sondheim writing this musical that never really got turned into a good movie, I don't think. I know Bette Midler did it at one point. But all right, so yeah, other criteria? So there seems to be self-deprecation, and we'll see a few examples of this self-deprecation, both because that's part of our underlying humor, and I think the first clip I want to show is that so many Jews, and I'll talk about my congregants as being part of this, I know not you, but my congregants are so skilled at their jobs. They're teachers and attorneys and doctors and accountants, whatever they do for their jobs, and they are skilled. And they come to temple, and they feel connected to temple, but they don't feel like, they are an A+, whatever they do for work. And they don't feel like an A+ Jew. There's this deprecation about walking into a synagogue going, I don't know all the prayers, I don't know all the Torah portions, I can't read Hebrew, and this struggle that they have, and so there's already this self-deprecation because there's so many hurdles to being an A+ Jew in their mind. So I think that's part of it. We'll see a few clips that really nail that. Can a so-so movie be a great Jewish film? Maybe. The Frisco Kid might be. I brought a few clips of different things, and I could have brought the Frisco Kid. There's one thing, going back to authenticity. There's a piece of authenticity in the Frisco Kid that I really like. Frisco, did you see Gene Wilder, 1972-ish, Harrison Ford, and you have, it's a little bit too schmaltzy and shticky. You have Gene Wilder, who is this Eastern European Jew, who's tasked with being the new rabbi of San Francisco back in the, whatever this is, in the Old West. And so here he is, he takes the train as far as it will go, then on horseback, he's trying to go. And there's a point where he won't get on his horse on a Saturday until sunset. And so there's what they called back then Indians, but what we call now Native Americans, who are chasing after them with tomahawks. I mean, like like it's an old Western film. And Harrison Ford says, "You're going to die if you don't get on your horse and hightail it now." And he goes, "Not yet." And like we're watching the sun slowly setting. And then he goes, "Okay, now." And he gets on the horse. I was going, there aren't 3 stars in the sky. I'm not sure if this counts. And what's the halacha of this? And to save a life. And there are some cute moments in there. Wait, all right, so can a so-so movie be a great Jewish film? Your answer was yes, maybe. This book, I would have you guess, but we'd be guessing all day. The number 1 greatest Jewish movie of all time is The Chosen. According to this book, the question is it a great movie? It's very Jewish, right? And Robbie Benson and so it's all right. So I broke this down into categories because I realized if you're going to make a list of the greatest Jewish movie, we're not going to go through a list. We're not making a list, although we can come up with one. You have to decide how many. We'll get to that. How many of them are Israeli? Are all Israeli films automatically Jewish films? No. I mean, some of them are Jewish. If you saw a footnote, it's about a father-son rabbis who are up for a prize, this big prize for studying Talmud. And so there's Judaism in it, but some of them have it's Jewish directors and Jewish actors and Jewish characters, and it's in Israel, but there's nothing Jewish about it. There's a whole category of films about the Holocaust. And for me, where I'm going to stand now is I don't want to include, if I want to make a list of the top Jewish movies or best top Jewish moments in film, the Holocaust, I want to put that in a separate category. I don't want to define my Judaism by the Shoah. And so that's, I think, a separate category. Number 3 greatest Jewish movie in this book is Schindler's List, which might be, and at the same time, it's sad that that has to be our representation of this. And the other question is, how much anti-Semitism is allowed? We could make a list. Anybody want to give me an example of a movie about anti-Semitism? Great answer. Gentleman's Agreement. I think it won Best Picture in 1947. And here you have this movie, which they could still make today. Is it Gregory Peck, who's a journalist and he has to go undercover as a Jew. And for whatever is a week, he has to be Jewish. His daughter has to go to school and say that she's Jewish and see what the fallout is. And they lose friends. And what an incredible movie with that. There's Chariots of Fire, which won Best Picture in 1981 or so. There's School Ties that we had to watch every year in Hebrew school. School Ties was a boarding school, a prep school on the East Coast. And the actors are all now famous. It was Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Anthony Rapp and Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser plays a Jewish kid, and he's trying to decide, do you hide your Jewish star or not? And how many years in a row at Hebrew school we had a talk of, do you hide your Judaism or not? And for me, growing up in Agora Hills, going to Hebrew school in Encino, everything I did was Jewish. I didn't know anybody who wasn't Jewish. Like, who am I hiding my Jewish star from? When I told some friends I was going to talk about Jewish movies and TV shows, somebody goes, "Oh, you have to talk about Seinfeld." I thought, is Seinfeld, is it Jewish? It's so interesting. The 4 actors are all Jewish. The creator is Jewish. They don't even go to a deli, they go to a diner. It's like, there's not one moment, there's the Bris episode, which is a Shanda. There's the rabbi character who is awful. There's really no Judaism. Right, the most Jewish moment is fighting with a woman over marble rye. That's the greatest Jewish. Otherwise, it's so interesting that you have these Jewish actors who are not Jewish, and George Costanza feels so Jewish, but he's Italian and they don't celebrate Hanukkah. Nothing. Although, gosh, Jerry Stiller on that show should have won every award there was for that. Another one, so then there's the movies that aren't Jewish at all. We mentioned this a little bit, but feel so Jewish. Rabbi Stuart Vogel's example of this is Groundhog Day. This Groundhog Day came out 32 years ago or so. If you haven't seen it, watch it again. I don't know. And it's a time loop where Bill Murray's character is stuck in the same day over and over, essentially until he gets it right. And what does that mean? And so that's his example of a good Rosh Hashanah movie. How do you live your life in a way that is meaningful? And he tries to do things that are thrill-seeking. He tries to do things that are. It's only when he treats people well, when he treats himself well, when he's proud of himself, when he's kind, that's the day that ends up making it. If you want, there's a new version of the movie called Palm Springs. It came out, 6 years ago, and that's the end of my time. And it's not really. And Palm Springs is, I don't think it's written by a man whose last name is Schaefer, but it's essentially a midrash on the Garden of Eden. There's a midrash written on the Garden of Eden that they put into a movie starring Andy Samberg. And to me, it feels so Jewish. I was actually flying home from a wedding in Chicago. A couple in Chicago asked me to officiate their wedding. On the way home, and under the chuppah, I tell this midrash about wanting to spend, rather than spending eternity in paradise, Adam takes a bite of that piece of fruit, and by doing so, he knows that he is now mortal. He can feel pain and discomfort. He's going to age and be sick, but he'll be with the woman that he wants. He'll be with the woman he loves, and better to spend a finite amount of time with the person you love than eternity in paradise alone. And I say this to this couple under the chuppah, and I get on a plane and fly home, and on the plane they say, what movie do you want to watch? And I pick this movie I've never seen called Palm Springs, and that's the exact plot of the movie. But what are the chances? And so here you have this deeply Jewish movie that's not Jewish. Another one for me is Defending Your Life. It was an Albert Brooks movie with Meryl Streep from about, 92, 80, late 80s, early 90s. And in it, his character dies, and their version of Judgment City, this in-between heaven and Gilgul, of coming back to earth and reliving living a new life, reincarnation, is you look at your life on a screen and you see what mistakes you made, where did you live in fear, and to me that's such a Jewish moment. And Albert Brooks is Jewish, so maybe there's something inherently Jewish. For 5 points, what is Albert Brooks' real name? Albert Einstein. Right, and so he's Jewish. And so just wanted to point a few of these out. Yes. Assimilation movie. Give me an example of this. Hester Street, despite the fact that it looks like it was made in 1930, was made in like 1980 or so. It's probably in this book. It's probably one of the top movies. And it's Carol Kane in one of her first roles. And she comes over from the old country, and her husband's already here. And she's got a shaitel, and she's still old country Orthodox, and she comes over here and sees her husband, who she doesn't even recognize because he's now an American. Right? There's the story that if we dug up the bottom of the Hudson River, you just find a whole lot of tefillin down there. Of people coming over, and when they got close to Ellis Island, and they said, I'm not going to be Jewish anymore. I'm going to take my tefillin off and throw them into nobody will know. I'm going to start over. And many of you can tell the story of your family's name, that it used to be Lubermirsky, and now you're, Smith, or whatever it is. And you changed your name, and so you changed your identity. You want to come over here and start fresh. It's actually the origins of the conservative movement, which I'm not here to talk about, but the conservative movement really started when these old country Orthodox were coming over from Europe, and they show up with their beards and their payas and their old school dress and their shaitels, and the Reform movement, which was budding here, said, you can't do this in America. We're trying to look normal in America. Don't bring us down. So and we know that you're not going to become Reform. Let's find a compromise. go to JTS. And so all of these rabbis, Heschel and Kaplan and all these rabbis who were born in the old country came over here and became conservative because that was this middle ground between old country and American. But so Hester Street, I think, is very Jewish. Crossing Delancey is very Jewish. Avalon. So I did a lot of research, not that you could tell, did a lot of research into what other people would name the great Jewish movies, and Avalon comes up a lot. Wow. Portnoy's Complaint and Goodbye Columbus and all of the, what's his name? Philip Roth, right, these kinds of things. I think part of it is the movies often reflect what we're going through. And so here you have these movies of the late 60s that are trying to figure out what's our role. Right, Rabbi Feinstein's, one of his top 3 favorite teachings, I'm sure you've heard it, is about Look magazine. You haven't? Look magazine in 1964 came out with an article that said the end of American Judaism, that sociologists have found that ethnic groups last for 3 generations in America before they disappear. They just become American. The Italians and the Irish, and I mean, it used to be very segregated, and in certain towns it still is, but for the most part, they're just American. And 2 generations ago, the Italians weren't allowed to play with the Irish kids, and now what do you care? We're all just here. And Jews are just this outside group at the beginning. Right? We came over as Hester Street, then a generation later, and then a generation later. And I look at, as we moved further into the suburbs, and we kind of gave up our Judaism in their imagination. So the late 60s have, my dad's other favorite movie is, there's a big wedding scene, Lovers and Other Strangers. It's a similar time period of, how are you going to be Jewish in the world today? And this is the big question that we're grappling with in each of these generations. So the first, it was mentioned before, the first talkie of all time, The Jazz Singer, 1927, which, do you think, how incredible this is? The first movie with sound is Al Jolson, who's got the biggest mausoleum on the way to the airport, is him, the cantor's son, grappling with, do I stay in the American world, or do I become a full-time Jew? And this is the big question of The Jazz Singer, which is probably the big question of that era. World War I has come to an end. We are welcomed into this country as Americans. Maybe we should just be Americans. And I think this question keeps on coming up. Another movie that isn't Jewish but is so Jewish, one of my favorite movies, is Some Like It Hot. And here, Billy Wilder witnessed persecution and murder in Europe, changed his name, came to America, changed his identity, and wants to just be American. He's hiding from the bad guys over there, and he comes here and he puts on this costume to hide. And here you have Some Like It Hot, this great, if you haven't seen it, come on, what are you doing? But you have these 2 guys, Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, witness a brutal murder in Chicago, and they're on the run, and they put on costumes to go on the run, and they're afraid that the murderers are going to follow them, so they make it to Florida, which is really San Diego, and they dress as women, and the end of the movie is Billy Wilder's great moment. The end of the movie is Tony Curtis's character takes off the wig and goes, I want to go back to who I was before. I want to be me. I'm going to take off the wig and take off the high heels and take off the pantyhose, and I'm just going to be me. And if they kill me, they kill me. And Jack Lemmon's character goes, I actually like living in a wig. I like hiding. I want to be American. I want to fit in. And so you have these 2 characters that are really grappling. And you could imagine if they made this movie not about drag, but about being Jewish. And here you have this person who's hiding their Judaism, and at the end of the movie, as they're in the boat with Osgood whatever that character's name is. And they're taking off in the boat, and he says, "I'm not a woman, I'm a man." And the response is, "Nobody's perfect," which is on Billy Wilder's headstone, says, "Nobody's perfect." It's a great last line of a movie. And to think, did that conversation happen as well, where you're hiding your identity, and you finally say, "I'm a Jew," and their response is, "Nobody's perfect." In a loving way, all right, so let's see if this works. If it does, all right, y'all want to know my password to my computer? I want to show a few pieces that I think are, and we'll see how. Your name is Abel? Aiden. Sorry. Okay, I heard the beep and went to sleep, so we're okay. Somebody said authenticity. The moments I'm going to show, I think, are mostly authentic, and we'll see that. But I watched this clip from All in the Family last night. I don't know if you remember this moment. It's from season 1. And of course, All in the Family. Has anybody not seen All in the Family? I'm like, do I have to explain what Norman Lear, who he is? Like, I figure, you're right. When I talk to my high school students, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So we'll see if we can see it. And if we can't see it, it's okay. Like, if the color's not great. There's a moment in All in the Family, they have a Shabbat dinner. I don't know if you remember this moment. And they decide to say the blessings. And here's what they do. They pick up a piece of paper, and Carol O'Connor goes, "Praised are you, Lord, who gives us the fruit of the vine." And they drink their juice or their wine. And then another character picks up a piece of paper and says, "Praised are you, God, who gave us the bread." And maybe in 1975, that was pushing the envelope to have this scene. I couldn't find the clip. There's a clip, the show Transparent, where about who's the actor? Jeffrey Tambor realizes that he's a woman, and he grows his hair out and wears dresses. And in the first episode, he tells his kids that he's a woman and wants to be a woman from now on. And the kids are grappling with this. And he says, "Nothing has changed. Let's sit down and have Shabbat dinner." And their response is, "We never do Shabbat. Like, what are you talking about?" And they light the Shabbat candles, and they start singing the blessing over the candles with the Hanukkah melody. And they stop halfway through. They go, "This is the Hanukkah melody. This isn't the Shabbat melody." And like the fact that it's in Hebrew, they chose a melody that's in the realm of correctness is just amazing. That from 1970 something to 2000 something, the idea of what you can show in Judaism on TV is so drastically different. So this is, I think, one of the greatest pieces of cinema of all time is the HBO adaptation of Angels in America. It was, if you ever have 7 hours with nothing to do, I recommend watching it. It was a play. It was on Broadway. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It was out here. Mike Nichols made it into a movie. The opening scene is incredible. There's this old rabbi, with white hair and a white beard and this old Yiddish voice giving a eulogy. And who is it? I heard you say it. Meryl Streep. I had to rewatch. I got to the end. I watched the credits. I'm going, what? I had to go back and watch the whole thing again. So in this, these are all made fictional characters, except for the guy in the bed who just died is Roy Cohn, who is, back in the news. And so Roy Cohn has died, and the nurse, this person says, we have to do something to honor, like, he's terrible, but we have to honor him in some way. This isn't a political statement that he's terrible. It's just in the movie version, he is. And this character who's Jewish, and he's trying to get AIDS medication for his friend. So he's there, and they're going to give him Roy Cohn's extra AIDS medication, but only if he sanctifies this moment. And as he's trying to do something sacred in this moment, who comes out as a ghost from the curtains is Ethel Rosenberg. Ethel Rosenberg, do I have to explain who this is? Okay. Who again is played by Meryl Streep. I think it's a beautiful thing they did with this TV movie version, is they did it like it's a play. In the play, they had one actor playing 4 roles. So when they did the movie, they had one actor playing 4 roles. Oh, This went to bed, but that didn't go to bed, so it should go back up. There we go. And we'll see if we can hear. How do I hit play? There we go.
Yisgadal v'yisgadash. Shemay Rabah, Shemay the good show. Beret pre-Hagaf. No, it's the Kiddush, not the... Shema, Yisrael. I don't know. This is silly, please, I can't.
Alma, Divra, Hirusay, V'yamlich Malchusay.
There is a bad word in this, so just to be warned, there's a bad word.
Yehesh merabo muvarach la'olam u'lomei
Yisparach ve'yistabach ve'yispoar ve'yisroman ve'yisnaseh ve'yisadar ve'yisaleh ve'yisalah Shemay the Kudusha. Tushbachaso v'nechemoso damiron ve'omo v'imru omen. Yehi Shlomo Rabo min Shemayo v'chaim olenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru omen.
Aseh shalom bimromov huya aseh shalom olenu v'al kol Yisrael.
Aseh shalom v'imromov huya aseh shalom olenu v'al kol Yisrael.
V'imru omen.
V'imru omen.
You son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch.
They do almost the whole Kaddish. Like they didn't just start it or just cut to the end or something. They really sat there in this moment. And that when he takes I've been doing this enough time that I've seen people take a napkin and going, keep on, that it felt, and then I love the line when he goes, Borei Priagafen Kiddush, Kaddish. Like it's written, Ben Shankman is Jewish. And Al Pacino is not Jewish, but he plays Roy Cohn. I just think that there's something so real and authentic about this moment and heartbreaking about this moment. Here's what I wanted to start with. This is, I think, the most Jewish moment in film that I can think of.
Need more time to file your taxes this year? Get a free 6-month
All right, if you haven't
IRS
this is my
tax
reminder to
extension
you.
now and avoid the potential for heavy penalties. By extending
Mama ist ein Wunder. Emma ist ein Wunder. Mama!
Ja, jetzt kannst du helfen mit dem Eis? Der wart schon mit etliche Stunden zurück.
Ja, geh treffen, was erst passiert. Du kennst dich. Ich bin zurückgekommen nach dem Lublinerweg. Und dann mittendrin ist ein Rädel abgefallen von dem Vogel. Dank Gott, was hat passiert? Ich bin nach Hause geflogen. Ich hab schon verkauft die Gänse.
Wie viel hast du gekriegt?
15 Groschen. No, das ist nicht scheier. No, ich hab sich bemüht, mit allen Keuchen zuzustellen, dem Vogel. In den Mitten plötzlich sehe ich ein weiterer Droschke. Ich komme dich von Lvov. Ich hab sich geklickt, ha? Ja, es muss sein auf dem Weg, also spät bei Nacht.
Ja, Gedilla hat mich getroffen.
Ja, no, das ist abgekippt, Gehäse, Chaim, ha? Nu, ich stell sich. Gib mir eine Hilfe. Wir retten, wir schmissen, verdusen, Jens, Sof Gott, sof ist du wusst, die kennst. Treitel Groschke. Treitel Groschke, Reb Groschke, die kennst den Peiselbohnen sa Vetter. In a gelernt, der ist Mamenju. Ist gewinnt Talmud beim Krakower Reben. Kennt Säuerafälle. In der ganze Gemur kennt verließen weit.
Der Rabbi Shalom hat uns verscholten.
Was?
Kreitel Groschka wäre steut. Ist gestorben schon mit 3 Jahren zurück.
Jeden, was redst? Was plappelst, hè? Ich hab ihn gesehen, ich hab mit ihm geredet.
Was gerät mit der Dibig? Kreitel Groschka wäre gestorben von Typhus bei Pesselbunnen und Stieb. Sie hat es mir allein erzählt. Bei ihr ist gewähnt die Schüwe euch. Wer ist das?
Ich hab ihn eingeladen nachher. Sollen wir ein bisschen Suppe, soll sich aufwärmen. Der Mann hat mich geholfen, Dore. Reb Kroschke, sei noch ein Gast im Stieb.
See good Velvo.
All right, we could keep watching this. Anybody remember this movie? The movie is A Serious Man. It was made by the Coen brothers. The Coen brothers are, I think, they're Jewish. They went to Hebrew school. The movie takes place where they grew up in St. Louis Park, which is outside of Minneapolis. This opening scene of the movie itself is a retelling in their imagination, a retelling of Job. Just, there's a guy and everything bad is happening to him. His son's bar mitzvah is coming up, and the son keeps on messing up, and the wife and the neighbor and his brother is, it's just like all of these bad things, and he can't get tenure at his job, and all these, but the opening scene, when I saw this, first of all, I thought, how does anybody less Jewish than me understand what's going on here? And second of all, I just love that there's no explanation. They say Dybbuk. They don't explain what a Dybbuk is. I think most Jews don't know Dybbuk is some sort of ghost. It comes from the word to stick, like something that's stuck to earth in some way, even after death. I love that it's in real Yiddish. It's not in like an over-the-top New York accent Yiddish. This is, imagine watching Fiddler on the Roof. I didn't see the Yiddish production, but imagine watching Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish. I guess it maybe would have been Russian, depending on how far Anatevka is into the empire. You speak Yiddish, and this is Yiddish. The movie opens with this. People are coming into, the Coen brothers made Fargo, which I don't think I got to it, but on one of the lists of top Jewish movies of all time, Fargo was listed. But Fargo has no Jewish character, like there's nothing Jewish, and they explained that it's almost based on an old Yiddish joke, because that's why they thought that it was, okay, fine. Fargo and The Big Lebowski and Blood Simple, they make all of these kind of very dark, interesting movies, Hudsucker Proxy, and then they make this. People are going to see, what are they going to make next? And they come in and they see in the first scene, they go, is this the whole movie? The first 8 minutes is just Yiddish. What does that mean to be watching this movie that's all in this kind of real Yiddish? So you have, Five-ish Finkel, I believe, come in and he talks Yiddish with them and they kill him. They take the fire, I think the wife kills him because she's scared, because it's called A Serious Man. The rest of the movie takes place in 1960s Minneapolis, but the first 8 minutes are this. I can't imagine, I imagine people anywhere in the country, some film festival watching this going, what? What? At what point is this going to turn into a language we understand, into what's going on? It's very dark. The rest of it gets a little bit lighter in terms of color. But I hate recommending movies because I'm afraid if you don't like it, you're going to blame me. So I'm recommending it to an extent. Here's another one that's now controversial to show, but I don't work here, so I could show it to you. Is Annie Hall. This one, Best Picture in 1977. If you remember, it was a huge upset because that year everybody thought that Star Wars was going to win Best Picture. George Lucas creates a different world, which you can go visit at the Reagan Library. And here's Annie Hall, which is like just a slice of very low-key New York. This whole movie cost less than one scene of Star Wars. And a lot of Annie Hall, if you remember it, is comparing his family to Diane Keaton's family and kind of going back and forth. So we'll show a clip of this, of how he sees himself, back to this self-deprecating part. It's not my favorite, if we're allowed to talk about it, it's not my favorite Woody Allen movie. I'm not sure, maybe Crimes and Misdemeanors, which has one of the great Jewish scenes for me is in Crimes and Misdemeanors, is it kind of plays with time, and whoever the he is who's the guy on Law and Order? Jerry Orbach? Maybe it's him or Alan Alda. Somebody walks into his old home. As an adult, he walks into his childhood home, and he sees his family from 50 years before having Pesach Seder, and the arguments that happen over Pesach Seder. And it's a really beautiful moment right there. This is a different one that's just silly.
It's a nice ham this year, Mom.
Oh, yeah. Grammy always does such a good job.
Great sauce.
It is. It's dynamite ham.
We went over to the swap meet. Annie, Graham, and I. Got some nice picture frames.
We really had a good time.
Anne tells us that you've been seeing a psychiatrist for 15 years.
Yes, I'm making excellent progress. Pretty soon when I lie down on this couch, I won't have to wear the lobster bib.
Dwayne and I went out to the boat basin.
We were caulking holes all day.
And
You get a sense of it, but and maybe this is what we were grappling with in the 70s, is this how we see ourselves? We think that we're normal. You go into the waspiest, you go into a non-Jewish home and it just feels so uncomfortable. Everything they talk about is the opposite. And later on it shows his family, which is just loud and boisterous, and they're fighting over things, and they're yelling at each other. And to compare it to here, where each person talks, one at a time. And how does he see himself? Like he's wearing payas, and so it's just a fun moment. Here's, I think the other most Jewish movie of all time is The Prince of Egypt. This was a cartoon it was DreamWorks' first cartoon. So here's Steven Spielberg's hand is in this. If you ask any rabbi who was in Los Angeles during the 90s, they will tell you that they were the rabbinic consultant on this movie. Every teacher I had, including Rabbi Schulweis, told me that they were the rabbinic consultant on this movie. You can't quite see it here, but I remember watching this as a kid and watching the Ten Commandments scene and thinking, why did they do that? Why did they make the Ten Commandments in gibberish? That's not Hebrew letters. If you look at, you can't, with the projection you can't see it, but if you see it, you go, that's not Hebrew letters. What are they doing here? And one of my teachers in school was Tzioni Zevit. Any of you have Dr. Zevit as a teacher? Oh boy. He said that he was the consultant on the movie, and he got the phone call from Spielberg, from whoever, saying, what should the Ten Commandments say? Because a lot of synagogues have their ark is the Ten Commandments, but it's 2 words from each of the Ten Commandments, just to summarize it, keep it short. And Dr. Zevit said, the big question is, what letters are you going to use? I said, well, we're going to use Hebrew letters. He goes, well, do you want it to be legible for Jews today? In which case, there's a lamed and there's an aleph. And if you know a little bit of Hebrew, you can see what these words are. Or do you want it to be accurate? They go, what do you mean? Well, the language has evolved as languages do, and the letters didn't look the same 3,000 years ago as they look today. So the decision was made to put it in what looks like cuneiform. It looks like Japanese. It just doesn't look Hebrew, except that it's, according to Dr. Zevit, more accurate. If you find the Dead Sea Scrolls, which haven't been touched in 2,000 years, their lettering looks, well, not that you could see it, but like this. I have a poster in my office of the development of the Hebrew language. Got 5 minutes. And so I just thought, what an incredible moment, and would you as a filmmaker make the same decision? So here's, this will be the last clip that I show, which is the exodus of Egypt. They're walking towards the Red Sea. They're leaving Egypt, and this song won the Academy Award that year, sung by the two great Jewish singers, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. Oh, I want to show you another commercial first. What can you do?
Going into an office, working 50 hours a week, having that structure. And you
I think it's a beautiful moment. And the fact that they go to the Hebrew, they don't translate Micha Mocha into English. This is the song of the sea. This is, we say this every morning in our prayers, Ashira Ladonai, Ki Ga'o Ga'a. I mean, these are words that I think most Jews don't know, which is wonderful. It's still in the Siddur. It's in the book of Exodus, and here's what they chose to do. I thought, what a strong move. To make a Jewish movie, you can make it Groundhog Day or Defending Your Life, where you take a midrash and modernize it, but you can also tell a story in their real language of the time, in Yiddish, in Hebrew, in Aramaic. And I just think that's beautiful. So the final thing we're going to do in the next 2 minutes, we're going to write a script for a movie that we're going to shoot later today. No, okay. But I think it's fun to look at these movies and to keep an eye out for the latest Jewish movies. Yeah. So, in motion, Jews were the originators of the movie industry, and there's, for a whole lot of reasons that we can go into, that Carl Laemmle and the Warner Brothers, all these people, and there's often a fight that the Jews don't want to make the Jewish movies. They don't want to stand out as the other, and as soon as you make, what are they going to think about us if we do this? And so it's sometimes a fight to get these movies made, but it's thanks to them, and hopefully we get to keep seeing these movies. There's more Coen brothers, there's more Darren Aronofsky, there's more Spielberg, there's more Natalie Portman, who are taking Jewish stories and authentically telling them to the world, not so that we're not stereotypes, but you see an authentic representation of who we are and what we do. Thank you for allowing me to come in here today. What a fun thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was so fun and entertaining and Jewish.